Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. I hope you're all doing very well today. This video, I want to tell you a little bit about the 1981 Donruss. As you can see right here, I have a full unopened pack. In fact, I bought 3 of these things, and 1981 is a pretty historic year, I think, for the hobby. And there are certain years that are very historic. 1909 is one of them. Obviously, you have the T206 that was issued, and you have 1933, which was a part of the baseball Big Bang, if you will, in the hobby. 1981 is a pretty historic year as well. And a lot of people are like, well, why would 1981 be a historic year for the hobby? Like, I don't get it. And so it actually is the first year that Topps was broken up as a monopoly. And I did a pretty extensive article on 1981 being a very historic year. And so you had Flair, who brought a suit to Topps in 1975. They had actually been gearing up since 74. But 1981 was the first year that you had Topps, Donruss here, and Flair. And this is a 1981 Topps basketball. It's actually, I believe, the last year for Topps until I want to say, 1990. You had Flair issue basketball cards in 1986 for the first time, and in between, you had the Star Company basketball, and a lot of people, especially my friends that I went to school with, said, Star basketball, they really suck. And they kind of like urged me to throw away those cards, which a lot of people did back then. They are really kind of popular today. But 1981 basketball here, they are still found, and they're not rare. The one thing I've noticed is the borders are really thin. This is actually one of my favorites. Larry Bird. I saw a lot of Larry Bird growing up as a kid. Here in Boston, we had the Big Three, the original Big Three, Bird, McHale, and Parrish. And they're all in this set. McHale's rookie is also in the 1981 Topps here. But this is a card that was really cheap when I was a kid, yet I never saw it. And that was a huge problem going forward, because a lot of the cards from the 1980s were really kind of like out of my hands, just because they just weren't available. And so this is a 1980 Rickey Henderson rookie, and this was another really big card when I was growing up, and it was again another unaffordable card, or just unavailable. Most of my friends my age, we really didn't have this particular card. Maybe our brothers did. I know my buddy Mike, he had 3 of these. Actually, they were his brothers, and so he acquired the 3 from his brother when he gave him his collection. But for the most part, I did see Jeff Wilson do a pack, like a box break, not a pack, a box break of 1980, and I think they were at Kmart. I was honestly, I don't like to badmouth other YouTubers or collectors, but just to say, Jeff needs to do a lot more homework. He grew up in the same era I did, and he's about the same age. I think I have a few more years on him, but just say he needs to do more homework. I was incredibly embarrassed by that video that he did on this, and he said actually that this card is $180,000. Well, 1980 is a interesting year for baseball too, but you guys can grab this card really cheap raw, and I picked this one up for like $45 today. And sometimes all it takes is time. That's really it. And one of the reasons why I can pick up this card now is a disposable income. Obviously, when I'm like 5, 6, 7 years old, I'm not working, right? Well, I'm not in India or China, so I'm not working as a kid. But uh, you know, I didn't have any disposable income as a kid. I had to kind of like pick and choose packs instead, and you could try to pull cards from a pack, but that's risky. You just don't know what's in a pack. And then also the other thing too is that paying $45 for a raw card certainly beats paying 180,000. The odds of that actually happening are really slim. Now, in 1981, I wasn't collecting cards. I remember a lot of the ball players from 1981, 80, 1979, 78, and 82 because a lot of those guys were still playing in the mid to late 80s as well. Now, I didn't see any football really when I was growing up in the 1980s. I didn't start watching football until about 1986 when the Patriots were absolutely destroyed by the Bears in the Super Bowl. I don't think that the Patriots really had any kind of a chance whatsoever. Quite frankly, looking back, I'm surprised that they actually went to the Super Bowl in 1986. And Schaefer Stadium at the time was an absolutely horrendous place. I never went there. I've heard horror stories about Schaefer Stadium. Part of that was built by the funds of Dom DiMaggio of the Red Sox. And it was just a really bad place to play. But, that's also a time, too, when the Patriots were lucky that they could win 2 games a year. And Steve Grogan, man, I met him several years ago. Tall and lanky guy, and he just got pummeled, absolutely just destroyed. But he was a good quarterback, and a lot of times it takes for a team to win, it takes everybody from the owner to the general manager to the ball players all in sync, and that can be really difficult. Now, the 1981 tops right here. I love the design of this, and a lot of people they're really into the 1981 tops Joe Montana rookie, which I do have. I always wanted that card again, but it was really unaffordable and just out of my price range. And quite frankly, it was just not something that an 8 or 9 year old kid would have been able to get his hands on, unless he had an older brother or something who was willing to to fork over a very valuable card in the 1980s and the 1990s. That card too could have been, I think, had relatively easily when it first came out in 1981. Now, Ken Anderson here, he is up for Hall of Fame consideration this year. I hope he gets in. His autograph is okay. Some of these are really great to get autographed. And again, the design is really something that I gravitate towards. Also, football, I think, was printed at 1/3 that of baseball. And it would have been printed at the end of the year, I think. I'm not entirely sure when they started printing these or designing them, but I'll show you the back. And it looks something like that. It's a really neat back, actually. But yeah, Ken Anderson had a fairly decent career. I mean, enough to be considered for the Hall of Fame. And let's see. So another set from 1981, which I really enjoy. Again, I found a lot of these later in my collecting life. The Paul Coffey here is a card that I always wanted growing up, and I really appreciate this set quite a bit for the design. And the Oilers here uh, were one of my favorite hockey teams as a kid. They won a number of championships, Stanley Cups, and I think there's like maybe 8 or 9 Hall of Famers from these sets. This is Coffey's rookie, and again, the OPG were up in Canada, obviously, and that company goes back to 1911, and they started printing. I believe they started printing baseball and cards in about 1968 or so. If you guys know the exact date, let me know, because I don't know everything, and I don't claim to know everything, and quite frankly, it would suck to know everything. I don't want to be known as a know-it-all. I know certain things, a little bit about everything, but not enough to be called a know-it-all. But um, the other thing I didn't mention here too about this set was it was also regional as well. So there was parts of it that were only like in the Midwest and then like the East Coast. Uh, so it was pretty difficult to complete, I think, at the time. And a lot of the cards in this set actually, if you were looking for OPG, um, those cards were, I think they were printed on a softer stock because they were printed up in Canada. Actually, they could have been printed in Northern Ireland as well, because Topps printed a lot of their cards in Northern Ireland. They had a plant there, and so a lot of these cards, it doesn't matter if it's baseball or football or hockey. A lot of these cards were off center quite a bit, and that makes it a pretty big challenge if you're going to get them graded. And then, obviously there's certain players who are only found in the OPG set, like Paul Coffey here. And I grabbed this a couple of years ago, and I was thrilled. It's always been one of my favorite cards in the set, but there are a lot of really great cards and a lot of really great Hall of Famers too, and you can get them on the cheap too. So if you're collecting not for money, that might be a good way to get a bunch of Hall of Famers. And so, 1981 also had the baseball, obviously. I do have this set. I haven't opened it up actually. I believe it's still sealed. And what happened was after I believe after like 1994, I stopped collecting in 1994. I started going over to vintage, and actually prior to that, my collection was destroyed by well, it got, I don't know what happened, but it, water found its way into my collection and completely just destroyed everything. So I kind of like started over. I want to say that was 1989 is what happened, and I slowly began to start collecting modern again. And I think like 1991, 92, but then by 1994, the strike happened, and I switched over because I was not a fan of what was going on. I was angry at the ball players and angry at the owners, but I still wanted to collect cards because I love baseball. Anyway, so now this would be considered vintage, which I'm not really all that comfortable with, but it is what it is. So again, the 1981 Topps baseball here, I do like the design quite a bit. This is a blurry image of Rolly Fingers. Sorry about that, guys. Let me see if I can do something about that. Okay, there we go. So Rolly has a really great autograph, I think. He was at the Shriner show, and he was charging like $25 or so. I picked this up for 12. um, but he does have a really great autograph. And in 1981, he won the Cy Young Award, and it was a really important year for him. And that's why I actually wanted this particular card autographed. And again, I really like the uniform as well. Uh, I think it's a classic uniform, and the hat is really interesting. The cap is really interesting too. But uh, again, let me show you the back of this. The design of Topps logo here is great too. It's the little details that you catch, and this one has somebody wrote on it. I'm okay with that. To tell you the truth, I mean I'm not selling this card. It's just for my own personal use, and I always wanted his autograph too. And I don't recall really watching Rollie Fingers as a player back in the 80s. But there's one other card that I want to show you guys, and actually no, I take that back. There's two. So the next one I want to show you guys is a 1981 Flair, and this is kind of an important set. Really, there was a lot of issues with Flair back in 1981. Because Topps was declared a monopoly in 1980, and I'll go through that case in another video. I think I've already touched on it a little bit, and obviously I did a very lengthy article on 1981 being a very important year and that court case. But I really like the design of this card. In particular, Harold Baines. This is actually autographed, and I did show this autograph to a few of my friends, and they said that that's actually a very nice autograph from him. He has two versions of his autograph. I think this may be the early version, and a lot of people say that he really doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame because he doesn't have the numbers. He does have the years. I think he played 23 years. And I did watch a lot of Harold Baines, and at no time did I ever think that he was a Hall of Famer. But there are a lot of players in the Hall of Fame who got there because, because they knew somebody. And the first thing I can think of is Frankie Frisch, and Frankie Frisch was a Hall of Famer in his own right, playing in the New York Giants and the Cardinals in the 1920s and 30s, and he became so he was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1937, and by 1947 he was on the Veterans Committee. And he became the head of the Veterans Committee, and once he did that, I believe in the late 1960s and very early 70s, you see a lot of New York Giants players and Cardinals players that were being elected, and once you dove into their stats and their contributions to the game, guys like High Pockets Kelly, George Kelly, and Chick Hafey, those guys are they're below average ball players. Obviously, like we haven't seen those players play because if we did, we'd be over 100 years old. But a lot of those guys were friends of Frankie Frisch and Bill Terry and a sports writer named Fred Lieb, and those three guys got their friends into the Hall of Fame. And so we think that there's about 7 of those guys, and sometimes it's actually hard to figure out who was actually put in the Hall of Fame because of those guys and who at the time wasn't. And unfortunately, I think those ball players tainted the Hall of Fame voting process because these were friends of theirs. And Jesse Haynes may or may not be another, but it's really hard to like kind of say who was put there through legitimate processes and who wasn't. And I think Fred Lee really kind of put a lot of pressure on some of the voters. And so the other thing too is like that wouldn't be unprecedented. Actually, I think there's a few other Hall of Famers who were put in there because of other sports writers. Ray Schalk comes to mind in 1955, but in the case of Harold Baines, Tony La Russa is really, I think, involved in his Hall of Fame candidacy and enshrinement. I kind of feel bad for Harold Baines in a way because I don't think that he thought that he was really a Hall of Famer. He had a decent career, but unfortunately, a lot of people think that he's not really Hall of Fame material. That aside, though, what I really like about this is the photograph itself, and I like the design of the jersey. I think that's really cool. So, 1981 Flair had a lot of issues going for it. One of those issues was that the printing itself, and it made certain ball players, well, different colors. There was another problem too with the 1981 Donruss. Those guys were also, I believe, different colors as well. There was a lot of mistakes made with both of these. So, like the issue of 1981 Flair and 1981 Donruss was very fast. I think they only had like 3 months to get these things out because of the judge's order to break up tops, and that was a really interesting decision. I'm glad that they actually did that. So there's another card that I want to show you guys really quickly, and when it comes to card collecting and sports cards in general, the design goes a long way into making or breaking a company or a specific card, and it really does affect the value of the card overall and its collectability. And that's one of the reasons why I have showing you this right here. This is Cal Ripken Jr.'s Topps Traded. It's another card that I really could not afford growing up. There's a lot of issues going on with 1982 Topps Cal Ripken Jr. There was also specific cards from the 1980s that were they were gaining in monetary value so rapidly that it did two things. It brought in the investors, and they were kind of like crowding out the true collectors. When the investors got into the hobby in they say 1981 is the first year, starting with Flair and then going on to Topps. And this card in particular was forged quite a bit back in the 1980s. And that was because Cal Ripken Jr. was such a hot commodity back then, but also because the investors as well, and they jacked up the prices for cards like this. This is one of my favorite cards from the set, and the design itself, I saw a lot of this design on vans for some reason, and cars from the early 80s. Even if you don't know what the year is from the design, and this is a design that I specifically remember on vans of all things, and cars, and the color scheme as well. Very popular in the late 70s and early 80s. This came out in 1982, and this was actually the first year that I started collecting cards, and only because my dad threw me a couple of packs of 82 Topps, and I instantly fell in love with the design of this, and I think it's actually one of the reasons why I became a modern card collector. I didn't really fully collect cards until I was a little bit older in 1984. I think I would have been about 7 years old or so. So in 1982, I was 5, and so that kind of gives away my age here. But with age, you have a different perspective on what was going on at the time. I didn't really have that much of a perspective on what was going on around me. In 1981, which I'll open these cards up now, uh, I remember um, I remember Ronald Reagan getting shot, and so I was um, barely, I guess, cognizant of who he was. He ended up being one of my favorite presidents of all time. Aside from William Howard Taft, uh, and so historically, I also wanted to talk to you guys today also about what was going on in 1981. It's one thing to open up a pack of cards. Uh, it's another thing completely to have a full understanding of the economics behind the cards themselves. And this says $5 here, and I did pay $5 in 1981. Though I think collectors were paying about 40 cents for this. And again, uh, the um, the design of the pack I think went a long way to entice collectors as well. Kind of like Atari with their artwork. And if you guys haven't seen any Atari artwork from the 1980s, I highly recommend that you uh, read and look at the art of Atari. So in 1981, you didn't have the monthly Beckett price guide. Instead, you had something like this. This is also from Jim Beckett and Denny X. And this cost collectors and dealers $8.95. That was something that kids like me really couldn't afford. It is actually the 2024 equivalent of $31.08. But as you can see here, it has all three of the baseball sets from 1981. And I really like that Mike Schmidt. I really didn't get to see Mike Schmidt play in the 1980s, which is too bad. Being here in Boston, we only really saw the American League and the Red Sox. So this was really a very interesting book. Again, he did this book with Dennis X, and I believe from 1978 through like 1993 or something like that. But again, this is what dealers and collectors were using back then. And let me just show you really quickly what these things were selling for back then. I think James Beckett actually revamped this in like 1984 to have his monthly Beckett, which everybody in my circle, my group of collectors had on them at all times. It was kind of like our Wall Street Journal. All right, hopefully you guys can see that. This is the price guide for 1981 Donruss, and it gives a little bit of a insight into this specific set. They say it's an extremely thin stock, and more than one pose exists for several popular players. There are several numerous name misspellings and incorrect pictures in the set, which may be corrected in a later printing. So that's really interesting. But as you can see, this set was going for $14 in 1981. And I'm gonna get into the actual economics of this when I talk about the article itself. But for right now, let's get into this a little bit. I'm gonna open these packs. This is really interesting here. I never saw these when I was growing up. I never had the opportunity. Just being 4 years old or 3 years old. Yeah, I think I was like 4. So anyway, all right. And again, the design really goes a long way to to get somebody into card collecting. And ooh, jeez, look at that. Look at that. That gum is it's a killer. Let me. It's look at the back of that is really, wow. Look at that, fantastic. Yeah, we might have some technical difficulties here, but that's gonna. All right. Yep. I went through the. Look at that. All right, so that just destroyed. That just destroyed this card, and so, the other thing, I was really young in 1984 to know a lot of these ball players, but I said, like, some of these ball players were around later on in the 1980s. I do not recommend eating this gum at all. I've heard there's differences between Flair's chewing gum and Tops and Donruss. And Donruss actually, they actually had to issue a puzzle instead of chewing gum. They actually went back to court. This is really too bad. Look at that. That's really, I can't even. I'm gonna destroy the card if I. Obviously, it's like 40 years later that I'm 40, almost 45, right? So, that sucks. That looks like a really nice. That looks like a really nice card. Yeah, that's too bad. Unfortunately, I don't want to ruin the card here, but that gum really did a number on it. So, Joe, this is whoops, sorry guys. Joe Charbonneau. Yeah, so one of the interesting things about this is it gives you like a detailed career history on the ball player, and their batting record. That's really cool. Again, the design and that logo too. That logo, you guys can see that. That's a fantastic looking logo, and it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy Donruss from this era. It was the design, the logo. Rudy Law, definitely heard of this guy. I've definitely heard of him. That's a really neat photo. Obviously, like, they weren't joking. Like, the borders are really off center. I believe a lot of these are really off center, and again, just feeling the card, I can feel that it's very thin. It's really thin. They obviously corrected this in 1982. Rudy Law, that's great. That's really great. I know Jeff Wilson did a video recently on the 1980 Tops. And that I don't like to badmouth other YouTubers, but I'm just gonna put it to you this way: he needed to do a lot more research, and anyway, look at that photo. That is fantastic. Mike Scott on the Mets. They were hugely influenced by the Pittsburgh drug trials of the mid 1980s. So the Pittsburgh drug trials, they started in Kansas City, I believe, in about 1983 or so, and then it caught on like wildfire with the New York Mets, particularly because Keith Hernandez was traded from the St. Louis Cardinals to the Mets, and he actually brought drugs into the clubhouse and introduced those to Doc Gooden and Darryl Strawberry. And if that hadn't happened, I think that those two ball players would be in the Hall of Fame right now. I certainly think that Doc Gooden has a very good chance. This is actually prior to him anyway. I believe Doc Gooden was first in the league in like 1984. But that's a really fantastic card right there. I really like that. Some of these guys I might have to do some more research on. But And for the most part, like I kind of have an excuse here, um, but anyway, it's just because of my age, right? Anyway, Burt Blyleven, that's fantastic. Obviously a Hall of Famer. His 1971 tops is his rookie. It's a great looking card. It's one of my favorites. He's, I think he's kind of overlooked or overshadowed. And again, this is off center really bad, which is too bad, to tell you the truth. But the design and the Pirates logo here, it's actually a logo. It's just the the type which they used, and obviously what's really cool about this too. I'm not a big fan of that cap, uh, but I didn't play for the Pirates. I'd actually be kind of embarrassed, but that's just me. And you can tell his the pants right here. Uh, Banana yellow is not my favorite color, but anyway, that's really cool too. If you guys can definitely see that. But Burt Blyleven, Hall of Famer, it's really neat. I highly recommend if you guys wanted to. You guys could probably get his rookie card fairly cheap. It's not going to cost you a whole lot of money, and it's a great card. So yeah, really, really neat. That's really cool. All right. And I've never actually heard of this gentleman right here, third base A's. Um, but Charles O. Finley is the guy who started this with them with that jersey. So they had a really great run in the early '70s. They just had a phenomenal group of teams that went to the World Series or won the World Series. I think a lot of that had to do with Reggie Jackson. But yeah, you know what, the one thing I do like doing is doing research on these ball players, and a lot of them, just because of my age, I don't remember it, some of these guys, but I did watch a lot of American League teams come through Boston in the 1980s, and this gentleman right here, which Jeff Wilson calls Carl Yastrzemski. It's actually Yastrzemski or Yaz. Um, this was obviously later in his career. He retired in 1983, and I remember watching him in 1981 and '82. I didn't think that he was a very good ball player then, but I didn't know any better. So Kyle Yastrzemski here, he had a really great year in 1967, winning the Triple Crown. The next time that actually happened was 2012 with Miguel Cabrera, and he'll probably get in the Hall of Fame as well. A really decent ball player, I think. 1967 was the impossible dream year. Unfortunately, the Red Sox did lose the World Series to the Cardinals, and I think anyone who faced the Cardinals then and Bob Gibson probably would have lost. They just had a great ball club, those Cardinals, and the Cardinals went back to the World Series in 1968 and lost against the Tigers, which was that was another great World Series. And you guys can actually see these World Series on YouTube in full. So it's something I highly recommend. If you're into the ball players and history, you can watch complete games, and I do recommend doing that just to study the ball players. And I also, again, I like to study the cards and the manufacturing and what was going on in American history at the time that the cards were printed, because I think that's actually quite important, especially economic history, and the law actually gets involved quite a bit too with card production, as you can see with the 1981 Donruss and Flair. But Yaz also won the batting title in 1968 with 301. That actually kind of tells you, A is the year of the pitcher, and B, I believe they moved the mound, and so it was really tough for American League. not necessarily for National League, but Darrell Evans here. I have definitely heard of Darrell Evans, but again, I didn't get to see him play. But that's a really neat card. I actually like that card. It's quite nice. And the Giants had a really neat uniform too. So third baseman. Well, and again, these cards are very thin, and you can tell just by holding them. I'll have to check the weight on these. I have a gram scale too. It's just not popular with drug dealers. It's also popular with card collectors. I swear, Your Honor, I had nothing to do with that. But anyway, I just worry about getting pulled over with a gram scale and a black light, trying to explain to a cop that I'm actually not a drug dealer. I'm a card collector. This is way cool. Oh my God. Rod Carew. Oh man, that is fantastic. He is so underappreciated in the hobby. It's disgusting. I am just really like off. It's off-putting, really. He's got a great 1967 Topps rookie. His 1968, I think you can pick that up for like maybe $50. That's a great card. Even the border on the 68s are they're hit or miss. I don't know, but his 69 is awesome too. I love his 69 Topps. But anytime I can find a Rod Carew card, I'll put it in my collection, just because like he's very underappreciated in the hobby, and considering his statistics, like the guy was amazing. He really was. He's just not appreciated in the hobby, and his cards really reflect that. And the one thing I'm noticing here too with a lot of these cards, I don't know if you guys can pick this up, but the green border here kind of fades. It's not solid, and obviously the centering on most of these just absolutely sucks. Oh my God, there's no quality control whatsoever, and that actually is because they didn't have a whole lot of time to get these out. And I believe there's actually two printings of this particular set. And yeah, it's just horrible. Oh my God. But it's a really great card. And I love Rod Carew. I mean, yeah, he's fantastic. What a great card. And again, Hall of Famer as well. And this is awesome. I know Danny Darwin's not in the Hall of Fame, but that's a really great looking card, and he's very well known. He was with the Red Sox for a while, and I did get to see him play. But really, really fantastic. I'm gonna have to do a little bit more research on Danny Darwin, but I thought he was a really decent player, really decent pitcher, and somewhere I think between him and Frank Viola. I kind of get those guys a little bit confused. That's a really fantastic card of Danny Darwin, and I think he was a very decent pitcher. And here's the back of it. Really, really great. That's a great card. And then this is a favorite of a lot of people. A lot of people, collectors, think that Greg Nettles should be in the Hall of Fame. The case is out for me. If you guys can make a really decent case for Greg Nettles being in the Hall of Fame, let me know. It's a nice card. Unfortunately, it's really off center. But as we're seeing that these cards are going to be off center 9 times out of 10, it looks like. He was a really, really decent hitter. A lot of home runs off this guy. Right now he's got 280 home runs. And he's a fan favorite to this day. And again, a lot of people say that he should be in the Hall of Fame. Make the case for Greg Nettles being in the Hall of Fame. I'm not either way. I just don't know. I wouldn't be terribly opposed to it. Now, I know this gentleman is in the Hall of Fame right here, Paul Molitor. That's a card I've never seen before. I've never seen this card. It's the first time I'm actually seeing this card. He's also on the 1978 Tops along with Alan Trummell, and that's a card that again I could never afford as a kid. It was just way too expensive, and I did pick that card up for like $20. All it takes is time, really. 40 years. It shouldn't take 40 years for you to collect a card that you want. So I did actually see a video quite recently from Mike from Junk Wax Hero, and he asked the question, are your best years behind you when it comes to collecting cards, or are they in front of you? And for me, I said a little bit of both. When it comes to vintage, my best years are actually behind me because I have the majority of the cards that I want. And two, uh, pre-war is getting really, really unaffordable compared to when I first started as a teenager. It was very affordable to collect vintage, maybe 20, 25 years ago. In that sense, it's really behind me. But when one door closes, another one opens, and I've been able to branch out into different categories like vintage soccer, or cricket, or tennis, or boxing. So it really depends. And my best years are in front of me when it comes to quote unquote modern, which I actually consider this modern. And I know you guys are like, no, that's vintage. And if I said that this was vintage, I would feel really old. And so I am considering this my modern. And so uh, I now get to collect the cards that I wanted as a kid and never could, and they're far cheaper, I think, now, because if you haven't noticed that there are certain generations of collectors that are going after the cards that they grew up with, and a lot of the generation now, the new generations, they never saw these guys play. I barely did in certain cases as well. I did see a lot of Paul Molitor though, and that's such a fantastic card. So if the new generation isn't collecting the cards that I grew up with, they're not being collected on a daily basis like when I did when I was a kid. If that makes any sense to you guys. And Rick Monday, this is a fantastic card too. I believe Rick Monday was or is a veteran, and I collect a lot of cards of veterans who played baseball, if it's World War II or Korea or Vietnam. And there's a there's a really interesting thing that happened with Rick Monday, and I think it was in the 1970s, where two fans were on the field trying to light the flag on fire, and Rick Monday runs in and he takes the flag from them. And that to me is very heroic, very patriotic. The fact that he did serve his country, and I don't think he could stand to see something like that. It would bother the hell out of me, tell you the truth. I mean, it's a different story, but you know, you have the freedom to burn the flag, but why? And if you don't like the country that much, then there's other countries out there that you can go to. But that's really fantastic, and I I haven't heard Rick Monday's name in a long time, so this is really cool. And unfortunately, I didn't really get to see him play. Jim Morrison, after he died, he went to the White Sox. No, I'm just joking about that. Is Jim Morrison dead? Who's in his grave? I don't know. Anyway, really bad jokes here. But again, the design of the Chicago White Sox jersey itself, and this is actually I think the last year for this jersey. They did change the design of their uniforms in late 1982, I believe. And by 1983, I think they were like one game out of contention. Basically, it was between the White Sox and the Orioles, and they lost by one game. And the Orioles went on to the World Series, and they beat the Philadelphia Phillies. And that is like amazing because the Phillies had like 5 future Hall of Famers and Pete Rose. Grant Jackson, I think that's actually taken in Wrigley Field just because of the background. I've never been to Wrigley Field. I'd love to go. If you guys have gone to Wrigley Field, let me know on what it's like, because I'd definitely love to go. It's on my top list of vacation spots. Again, another gentleman I've never heard of, but at least I'm going to tell you guys I never heard of some of these guys, and I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form. It's one of the reasons why I always tell you guys to do research on the ball players and on the cards before you get into them, especially if it's something that you want to get into as an investment. But my feelings on cards as an investment purely, I don't think is a very good idea. That's just me. When I collect cards, it's for basically for artwork, for the history. And speaking of history, here in Boston, Jerry Remy. And if Jerry Remy ever gets in the Hall of Fame, it's going to be as a broadcaster. He was a very fiery ball player from what I remember, and I think his career ended in 1985. I had a very unfortunate incident with his son. I don't know if I should get into it now, but Jerry Remy is passed away from cancer, unfortunately. He led a very interesting life. His kids, on the other hand, they were very troubled. It's one thing to have one kid that's troubled, but all three. And Jared Remy, I had an unfortunate incident with him, and I thought he was going to kill me. I truly did. It's very rare that someone actually scares me, but he scared me, and he ended up killing his girlfriend. And it's a horrendous thing for Jerry Remy and his wife, and for the family. To tell you the truth, but his kid was selling drugs outside of or inside of Fenway Park, and I actually was warned to stay away from him. But he was a very scary guy, and unfortunately, I guess these things happen. But Jerry Remy is very well known in Red Sox circles and Sox Nation, and my condolences to his family for his passing and what happened to his kids. But this is really interesting. I mean, I never really got to see Jerry Remy play, and I think he had a 10-year career. And if he does get in the Hall of Fame, it's going to be as a broadcaster. He had a very long career. I think, you guys can let me know in the comment section below, but I think that he took over for Ken Coleman. But, yeah, and that is no border whatsoever. Rennie Stennett, that's really interesting. Unfortunately, that's just, oh my God, that's bad. But yeah, I might have to do some research on him. I'm just curious. There's certain ball players that you come across and you're like, who's this guy? And you want to do more research on him. And we have Fred Patek. I don't know anything about him. All right, here's the second, and hopefully this goes a little bit better than the last one. Unfortunately, guys, I didn't Unfortunately, I didn't get to show you guys the wrapper here, and this is again, this is stuck. Oh man, I don't know. This is one of the problems with opening up packs that's 40 some odd years old. Oh man, that's too bad. Well, I can't eat the gum. I wouldn't actually recommend you guys eating the gum anyway. I don't think that's really. There we go. Yep. Let me just show you. Unfortunately, it ripped here because, well, 40 years will do that. A card album, 1981. That is cool. Do you guys remember the album? Do you guys have an album? I've never actually seen one. Let me see if I can open that up a little bit. There we go. Save $4, only $9.99 or $10. Do you guys remember this? If you guys have one, let me know. That'd be awesome. I'd love to get my hands on that if I could. Really cool. Huh. And the pocket sheets. So there was a problem with the sheets, and it was the PVC itself, the plastic, was discoloring the cards, and it was a huge problem in the mid 1980s, and I think they solved it, but I don't remember exactly how they solved it, and I'll probably do some research on that in the future. Anyway, this destroyed the first card, unfortunately, which is, I mean, that's on there. It's going to destroy the card completely, which is really too bad. I kind of wish that they had something to protect the card from the chewing gum. But again, oh man, yeah, that ain't going anywhere. That's like super glue. That's too bad. That's too bad. Anyway, yes, again, it's a lot better. It's a lot better than the last one. But yeah, again, it's quite a nice card. And I know Mike Junkwack Shero would probably love this card. I might send it to him if I can. Set that aside for him. He probably already has it. He's one of the biggest Yaz fans that I know. Anyway, Tony Scott. That is an awesome card. Holy smokes. I don't know who Tony Scott is. I'm going to have to look up his name. But that is a great looking card. I've heard that Keith Olbermann actually did a number of photos for the company back in 1981. So a few of the photos are actually Keith Olbermann's, and he's been a great asset to the hobby. Keith Olbermann has. I know his political stance is really kind of off-putting to a lot of people, and that's okay. I'm not really here to talk about his politics. I really don't care, but that's a fantastic looking card, and I'll have to research Tony Scott a little bit further. And I believe I'd like to see Ozzie Smith. He's number one card in this set. I do have Ozzie Smith's card in this set autographed, and I picked it up for like $10. I wasn't actually sure if it was his, but here's another really fantastic looking card. I mean, that is absolutely fantastic. Joe Simpson again. Like, I really love the design of the uniform itself and the cap, but this is a really neat looking card. Some of the photographs really kind of make or break the cards in the company. Unfortunately, I know it's a little bit different subject here, but I see a lot of modern cards that are autographed like for crap, and it really destroys the card. And a lot of times, it just tells me that a lot of these guys are lazy and they don't want to do this. But if I were the company, I would be like, hey, listen, we need you to autograph this, uh, where it's not destroying the card. It's kind of like telling the fans too that they don't care about them. Here's another really awesome card. Um, Shane Raleigh. I don't know who this gentleman is, but again, the the Mariners jersey is really cool, and it kind of reminds me of the Seattle Pilots jersey a little bit from 1969, and I think that was like a 1 year uh, ball club. Um, where did they move to? I know they moved somewhere, but anyway, uh, that's really that's a really cool looking card. Yeah, really cool. What I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give these cards to the kids in the neighborhood, like I did with the '86 Donruss. Again, really neat card again. Craig Swain. Again, a lot of these players I don't recall. Here's something really interesting that just caught my eye. I don't know if you guys can see this. This edge right here, it's it's not sharp, and a lot of collectors really want to see that because it tells them that the card hasn't been shaved. And when I was a kid in the 1980s, the biggest thing that you had to worry about, besides the card being forged, was a wire cutter shaving the card. This has not, and the edge here is frayed, and that's actually what you want to see. That's very so like a lot of 1956 tops are you gonna see a edge like this, and I actually want to see that because it tells me that it hasn't been messed with. And then that's another neat card. I unfortunately, you know, I'm not gonna tell you guys that I know all these ball players or that this is even a good buy. Part of me says that I would not buy these packs just to open them up and sell them, or buy them for financial reasons. I'm doing this because they're a little bit of my memories. Some of the players I do remember, but I'm also very curious. It's been like, again, 30 years since I opened up a pack. I never got to open up packs from 1981 Donruss. Donruss was my favorite company. They had a lot of great designs, and the cards that I did see from 1981, I saw briefly, and none of my friends really had any. So that's a really neat looking card. And again, I really like the photography on some of these cards here. So that's awesome. Tug McGraw. So if you don't know Tug McGraw, he's very famous for the 1973. He was in two World Series, 1969 and 1980. He's also credited with the "You Gotta Believe" catchphrase. So he actually struck out Willie Wilson in the 1980 World Series to win, for the Philadelphia Phillies, and he unfortunately passed away from cancer, and I believe unfortunately, I think brain cancer in 2004. But he's definitely a ball player that I remember quite. We have another Wayne Gross right here. Rick Langford, and that image is really fuzzy. Actually, at least it seems very fuzzy to me. And then we have Jerry Remy again right here. I think that actually might be better than the last one I pulled. But yeah, the baseball card Sport Americana here said that these cards, there'd be multiples, and so Paul Molitor, another, and we already saw this card, but that's actually, again, that's a really fantastic card. That's really cool. And Rudy Law again, we saw that. Again, really neat. Steve Henderson. The Mets, historically, they were a very bad team. They used to, back in the 1960s, they lost like 100 games a year up until like 1968 or so, 69. So it's again it's a really neat looking card, I think. And again, one of the things that I'm really starting to enjoy is the photography of these. Jeff Reardon. Yeah, that Mets jersey is classic. It's a really neat looking jersey. And then Dennis Walling. That's a really cool looking card. That's really neat. And this is when the Astros were in the American League. And again, you guys can see that top border there. The fraying is what you want to see, and especially in like 1956 tops and maybe 57s as well. And those two years are pretty famous for that. But if you're collecting Hall of Famers from those 2 years, that would be an obvious giveaway that the card hasn't been trimmed or anything. And I don't think you're gonna find any Diamond Kings in this set. I think those came out in 1982. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm not a big fan of the 1982 Donruss or 83 Donruss sets. Just because the design itself is not my favorite. But again, that Astros jersey is awesome. It's really fantastic. And it's fitting that the Astros went from being the Colt 45s in like the early 60s to the Astros. And that makes a lot more sense than the Colt 45s, to tell you the truth. But yeah, that's really cool. I used to go and make fun of the Astros jerseys because I mean, look at that. Some people are like, "Oh, that's pretty nasty," and especially that ball cap right there. Like I wouldn't want to be caught dead wearing that thing. But I've since grown very fond of the jersey, and I kind of want to think that is a road jersey. I could be wrong. They could have changed it up a little bit as an alternative. You guys can tell me in the comment section below. Okay, so here, Bob Boone. That is the son of Ray Boone of the Indians, and I've heard he has actually a very decent career. But the jersey here, the powder blue with the that Philadelphia P with the baseball, that is classic, 1980s, fantastic. And I've already told you guys how I feel about the jerseys of the 1970s and 80s. They get a little bit better, I think, as time goes by. But that's a really neat card, too. And I do remember Bob Boone. I think he was on another team. A lot of these guys I was able to follow through Beckett and through reading the sports sections. I read the sports sections and newspapers as a very little kid. In fact, one of my first memories, I think, during this time was I'd wake up and I'd see my dad reading the newspaper, waiting for me to wake up, and he did that on a daily basis. And because I saw my dad reading the newspaper, I wanted to read the newspaper as well. And the apple usually doesn't fall far from the tree, and so, and the only thing is, like, I used to see my dad. He used to shave. I used to see him shaving, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to shave. Well, now you guys see me and I have a beard, so obviously, like, shaving sucks. But that's another story. Ron Guidry, he was actually a very good pitcher. He wasn't he wasn't played a lot when he was first starting out, but under Billy Martin, he really grew as a pitcher, and he won more games under Billy Martin than any other manager. And the Yankees in the 1970s and 1980s, I think they had like an incredible amount of managers. They just go through them. Billy Martin especially. I think Billy Martin ended up getting hired and fired like 6 times. and maybe he should be considered for the Hall of Fame. That's a discussion that you guys can have and let me know. But Ron Guidry really blossomed under Billy Martin as a pitcher, and this is a really neat looking card. Obviously, I'm not entirely sure where this was photographed, but it's obviously not in Yankee Stadium. But yeah, that's really cool. Even if it's, I'm a Red Sox guy, but or at least I used to be. I no longer can afford to be, a fan of one particular team because I am a writer, and I need to be objective. But I really have no problem with the Yankees like I used to have when I was a kid. It used to be the Red Sox and the Yankees, their rivalry. And this is the last pack that I'm gonna open. I only bought three packs, and I bought a few other years as well that I want to show you guys and kind of tell you about the history and the stories behind the hobby when these packs were. See here we go. Yeah, I really. Oh, jeez. This is horrendous. Oh my god. Oh man. Jeez, look at this. This is one of the nightmares I think collectors face today with opening packs. Again, here I'll show you. Okay, hold on. I don't want to ruin it for you guys. All right. Unfortunately, again, another card ruined by this nasty looking chewing gum, and gum was this may be actually a reason why gum was basically not put in baseball card packs in 1991. They stopped doing that, probably because of this reason. To tell you the truth, I enjoyed the chewing gum back then, and I know that they had issued gum in packs maybe like 15 years ago or something like that, and for like Tops, I think, and they had it wrapped in like a cellophane wrapper or something, but it was really good actually. This is James Lester Kern. Unfortunately, the card is gone, it's completely destroyed, which is too bad. I would have loved to have seen what that looks like. Texas. It looks like a neat jersey. From here, it really looks like a really cool jersey, and unfortunately, it's obscured by the gum. All right, so this is Jim Spencer, and the pack that I opened up earlier had this particular card that was again destroyed by the chewing gum, and so that's what that looks like. First base, again, I didn't really follow the Yankees back then, but every time they came to town, I figured they would just destroy the Red Sox. All right, here was Cecil Cooper, and he's actually a five-time All-Star, 1979, 1980, 82, 83, and 85. He had a really long career. I remember him with the Red Sox, actually, of being on the Red Sox. I don't remember actually watching him play on the Red Sox because he played from 1971 to 1976. Then he was with the Brewers from 1977 to 1987. He was a manager with the Houston Astros in 2007, 2009. Two-time Gold Glove Award winner, 79 80. Three-time Silver Slugger, 1980 to 82. Roberto Clemente Award. It's a pretty big award. Two-time AL batting. Two-time American League RBI leader, 80 and 83. American Family Field Walk of Fame. I'm not sure what that is. And he's with the Milwaukee Brewers Wall of Honor. And he had a 298 lifetime batting average, which, like Dom DiMaggio has a 298 lifetime batting average, and I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. Cecil Cooper here. This is a really cool looking card. I really like this. Unfortunately, it's off center like nobody's business, but it's still a great photograph here of him. That's a really fantastic card. And Dave Concepcion. So a lot of people say that he should be in the Hall of Fame, or at least have a vote for the Hall of Fame. I'm not entirely sure. Make me an offer. I guess I can't refuse as to why he should or should not be in the Hall of Fame. Either way, it doesn't really matter to me. But I want to see what you guys think. And this is not the greatest card in the world. I'm gonna tell you, I don't really like the photograph. But Dave Concepcion had a very long career, and I don't. Did he play in the 1960s? Guys, let me know in the comment section. I want to say like 1968 or 69, 1970. Again, I'm not entirely sure like when his rookie year was. I could probably look it up. So you have Lamar Johnson, and that logo is really fantastic. That goes back to 1976 when Bill Veeck bought the team. He bought it, and then he sold it just as fast. It seems like. I think by 1980, 81, I think he was no longer the owner of the White Sox. But again, it's one of my favorite logos. I did do an article on the design of the White Sox. I just haven't released it yet. I've been so busy with other things. All right, and here we go. Dave Parker. So he's up for Hall of Fame consideration this year again. He's been up for a couple of times now. And I'm not entirely sure what the holdup is. I think it's because of his drug use back in the 1970s and 80s. I think that's the reason. But again, like this is a really neat looking card, and he does have a very good case, I think, for Hall of Fame enshrinement. Again, same thing with Keith Hernandez. Is the drug use is really, I think, the downfall of both of those guys, and it's just really too bad. I think he got caught up in the Pittsburgh drug scandal of 1984-85, and I think he testified against certain ball players and certain clubs, and the drug pushers, if you will, drug dealers back then. As far as I remember, this was a huge deal back in the mid 1980s, and again, I think it started in Kansas City, and then obviously they call it the Pittsburgh drug trial for mainly being in Pittsburgh, but it actually affected a lot of other ball clubs, the White Sox, and Kansas City. I think even Detroit, and definitely the Mets. But he does have a very solid case, I think, for Hall of Fame. Who do you guys want for Hall of Fame? Who do you think is going to be in the Hall of Fame for next year when it comes to the modern guys, or not the modern, but my modern? So like the 1970s, 80s. Another Rick Langford. And so I just think this card was photographed kind of out of focus, because that's the second one now I've seen that's out of focus. Glenn Hoffman. I don't recall Glenn Hoffman at all. Then again, like I was only 4, so I think he was on the club for a while. Milt May, and he's the son of Pinky May of the Philadelphia Phillies from the 1930s and early 40s. You can find Pinky May's cards in 1939, 40, and 41 play ball, and the 1941 double play. But Milt May, I think, had a fairly decent career, fairly long career. And yeah. It's a neat jersey, too, by the way. I really like that. Very cool. There we go. Bert Campaneris. That's a guy I definitely know the name of. That's a neat card. That's a really neat card. Johnny Grube. See, that's a really neat jersey. I think I really like that. Again, they were really big into the powder blue for some reason in the 1980s, because the Cardinals also had a powder blue jersey, and they went to the World Series in 1982. And 1981 was the Yankees versus the Dodgers, and the Dodgers had won the World Series. I'm pretty sure. And again, I'm not sure who this gentleman is. I really didn't pay too much attention to the Yankees. I tried not to anyway. Don Mattingly wasn't even playing in 1981. He wasn't up yet. I think he was first up in 1983, 84, and Oral Hershiser wasn't even playing yet either. So there's a lot of players that I remember from the 1980s that hadn't quite gone up to the majors yet. Again, and the Brewers jersey is, again, something about powder blue here, but they had a really neat looking jersey, and that ball cap that they had was really cool. It was a really cool design. I told you guys about that in a previous video. Anyway, Ray Knight, that's got to have been taken at Wrigley Field. So they actually in Wrigley Field they did the ivy in like 1938, I believe. It was the first time when they planted that. And yeah. So I mean, that jersey is absolutely horrendous. And again, they revamped it in late 1982. But oh my God, and that's just, I mean, they look like hippie pirates. I'm sorry, but like that butterfly collar or whatever it is. I mean, that's so uncool. That is so uncool. And then again, this is a really cool looking photo. It's a really neat looking photo. But that jersey, that banana, that banana yellow jersey, and the cap itself, I'm not a fan of that. That's just, what were they thinking? And maybe someone can say, oh, that's the style of the day. Oh, none of my friends ever went around town with banana yellow anything, and they'd get their ass kicked, I'm pretty sure. But the photo itself is really cool. So the last card I'm going to show you today is Mike Torres, and this is a really neat looking card. That's really cool. He had an 18-year career spanning from 1967 to 1984. I vaguely remember Mike Torres. I know the name. 185, 160 win-loss, 396 ERA. He was with the Cardinals in 67 through 71. Red Sox 78 to 82. And that's that's right when I started to really kind of watch the Red Sox. And then he went on to the Mets in 83 and 84. And he won the World Series in 1977. He had a 7-year, $2.5 million contract. So let me tell you a little bit about those contracts real quickly. So a lot of the ball players had won a greater amount of contractual disputes against the owners prior to the Topps monopoly, and then after that, it was more in the favor of the owners than it was the players themselves, and you almost had another strike in, I want to say, 1985, and it was averted, but it was only because of the 1981 strike that the contract situation kind of changed. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about the 1981 season and these cards in particular, and I think you're going to find it really eye-opening. Here we go. This is from the Billings Gazette, Billings, Montana, April 6th, 1982. How Baseball Cards Have Changed by Dave Trimmer. A Cub Scout collector's badge that might still be around is all that remains of a prized baseball card collection. That collection, so enthusiastically pursued, would be almost 20 years old and worth something today, but it would take a serious adult baseball card collector to know. Way back when, those cards came 5 at a time plus gum for a nickel. Nowadays, they do things differently. Advertisements in the back of the Sporting News offer complete sets of 1982 tops. A set of tops cards, the long established leader at putting out cardboard baseball mugs, can be purchased for between $15 and $19, according to several ads. Two new companies have joined the bubblegum battle, Fleer and Donruss. A set of their 1982 cards is yours for $13 or $14, indicating their status as new kids on the block. One company offers combined Fleer Donruss set for $24 if ordered together. Of course, the new companies have yet to establish a long stable of big league players to pawn, although some ads don't tell you what you get for your money. It seems that a 1982 top set has 1,000 cards, while Fleer offers 660 and 26 team stickers, and Donruss gives 660 card set plus puzzle cards. Considering the major league teams carry 25 players on their roster most of the season, that's 650 cards. However, they do have 40-man protected rosters for 1,040 eligible bubblegummers. Add in coaches, managers, and team shots, and it's hard telling who has what offer. One ad offers all three at $36.50. Another for $1 less, plus a third for $7.49 more. For the collector who looks down on the Cub Scout pasting his cards in an album, most dealers offer 9-pocket plastic sheets for 15 cents to protect the cards in an album, which holds 80 sheets for $4. Many of the advertisements go back a couple of years. For example, 1981 top set of 726 cards is worth $23.25 from one dealer. That goes up to $39.25 for the 1978 group. However, another ad has the 1981 cards for $17.99, and yet another offers the 78 version for $32.99 and goes up to $39.95 for 1977 cards. Looking further, one dealer gives a 77 set for $54.99 and then jumps to $100 for 1975. And for those that can afford to pay their power bill, they can also jump in and buy the complete sets of 1971 through 1981 for $1,100. Of course, there are books to tell you what you are buying and why. It seems that since it has become gauche for big kids to collect little kids' cards, Greg Nettles, 82, will never get lost and be worth the hundreds offered for Mickey Mantle, 51, and if they haven't found more Mickeys by now, he'll be worth more. And it would seem that this day and age, Greg's will never disappear, but you can get 1981 error sets or Fleer for $59.95, but it does not include C Nettles as opposed to the G Nettles, which made dealers drool last year. A Donruss Error 1981 set is worth $37.95, and a packet of 5 different Fleer Errors is $6.95. Order now, the errors may be yours. Sadly, they never even mention if the order includes a hunk of dry, brittle gum for each 5 cards, there's still the chance to get in on the ground floor of card collecting, as many youngsters did years ago and have since lost or given away their prized possessions before they became cardboard money. So, just kind of going through this stuff financially, 1981 tops, they said that was $23.25, and the 2024 equivalent of that is $80.74. 1978 tops, $39.25, is the 2024 equivalent of $136.30, and the 1977 tops was going for $39.95. That seems really cheap to me until you realize that it's actually $138.73, and then the other dealer had it for $54.99, which is the equivalent of $190.96 as of 2024. And the 1975 set was $100. I would have been all over that like a bag of chips, but the equivalent would be like $347.27. So really out of the price range of any young collector, and really only collectors who had enough income at the time for that. And you could probably get that for cheaper. And then you have the 1971 through 81 run of every set, presumably all tops. So that would actually be extraordinarily expensive, even for your collector who's been around for a long time, because that's the equivalent of $3,819.92. So I don't know any collector who would have done that unless they were a dealer. And in that case, they would have wanted it probably maybe 30% of the actual value is what they would probably buy those sets off of a collector for. So, guys, let me know what you think of the cards that I pulled. If you have any stories or comments on the 1981 Donruss or Flair or Tops, let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that. And if you have any recollections of collecting these cards in 1981, I'd love to hear that too. Obviously, I don't recommend buying packs of this stuff. You can probably pick up an entire set fairly cheaply now, just because I think probably that a lot of the collectors are not going after these sets unless it's a generational thing. So like I think I've said this before, but cards from the 1950s, that's when my father's generation would have been collecting them, and they went back into the hobby in the 1980s, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of those cards started to go up in value. You start seeing that in Baseball Cards magazine starting in early spring of 1981, that a lot of the vintage was going up, specifically Mickey Mantle. But it was not just the memories of baby boomers that were driving up the prices of cards back then. It's also the speculators as well, and they did a lot of damage in the 1980s and especially the 1990s. And I'm going to go through probably a video or two on that as well. And I think I'm also going to dive more into Donruss and Tops and Flair in the mid 1990s as well. I did pick up a few other packages or packs of cards from 1986 and 1988 that I want to share with you guys as well. Again, these cards are my memories, and it's one of the reasons why I picked them up. And again, that feeling that you get opening up packs, it's a lot different for me. Because when I was opening up packs in the 1980s and the 1990s, they really weren't expensive. You could actually complete a set of, say, like 1986 tops or 84 tops or whatever for the most part, it wasn't going to break the bank. And today it's completely different. Collectors are not really able to complete sets. I don't think they're looking to complete sets just because the the packs themselves and the boxes, you're getting maybe like 4 or 5 packs, and in some cases it's costing the collector $1,200 for a box. And financially and economically, that just does not make sense. So it wasn't really financially viable for me to buy these packs. I wanted to do it for my own memories. It's not for the value, because the value isn't there. And 40 years later, 45 years later, whatever the case may be, a lot of these cards just have not held up in value, and you can see this in the price guides themselves, what they were going for in the price guide here, and what they're going for now. A lot of times that they just haven't held up value. And so in 1981, the hourly wage was $3.31, and the price guide itself, this price guide was $8.95, and that's the 2024 equivalent of $31.08. Actually, it gets kind of interesting from there, because the inflation rate in 1981 was 8.9%. It was actually the lowest since 1977, and in 1979 it was actually 1979, the inflation rate was 13.3%, and 12.4% in 1980. And that's actually when they included things like food and gas and shelter. And that was actually a 2/3 of the overall rise of the consumer price index. They no longer actually do that, which is really kind of stupid to me. That you don't include things like food, gas, and shelter in the CPI. So today, the inflation rate, the numbers, I think they've been fudged with quite a bit over the last dozen years or so, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. So I kind of take them with a grain of salt. Or what you can do is just add half to the actual rate that the government is saying what the inflation rate is. So if it's like 6%, it's probably more like 12%. But in 1980 and 1981, it was actually quite high, and that contributed greatly to what we see in the hobby, why these cards are going up in value, and why people are going into the hobby as speculators as well. And you also have a lot more economics involved too than you did previously in the 1960s and 70s. And I've said this before, but there's a pretty big gap in hobby history, specifically, I think in actually after Jefferson Burdick passed away in 1963. So from like 67 through I want to say 78, there is a gap in hobby history and what cards were actually going for. And the only thing I think that they were using between 1978 and the early 80s, specifically like 1984, because that's when you first had the monthly, and I don't even think it was monthly at that point, but you had the Sport Americana here. So it was something that really no collector of my generation would have really gotten their hands on. It was a 1 year kind of thing, and I want to say it was accurate. It really do. But were cards actually going for the prices in this price guide here? Again, I wasn't collecting cards in 1981. I really have no idea. I would love to hear stories from collectors from the 1970s and 1980s, early 80s specifically, to see what their recollections were of the hobby back then. And I think it would be really fascinating to hear some of these guys. And John Ramirez, I have done a lot of business with him. He was actually collecting cards and I think selling cards in the 1960s, and he has been to every national since 1980. And I'm pretty sure that he has a very good recollection of what the hobby was like and going through back in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. I'd love to interview him actually. I might want to go and do that actually, and see if he would actually come on and talk about the hobby from this time period in the 70s and the early 80s. And if you guys have any recollections too, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it here. Again, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. I'm up to now to 600 subscribers, which is really something that I never thought would happen. And so apparently somebody likes my content. And so my channel is really devoted to hobby history and history in general. And there's a lot of history through cards, obviously. That's why I named my channel History Through Cards Shortcut, because I don't like to go through all the immense details in my articles. I do have an article on my website for 1981 as a really important year for the hobby and for card collecting. And I think I only just scratched the surface of that. So anyway, guys, I will leave it here. But again, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section below. And I will talk to you in another video. Have a good one. Bye.